Welcome to Garden Valley Church Podcasts. We are so looking forward to having you join us today.
Well, hi guys. Welcome to the Youth Culture Podcast. I'm here with Flower.
Hello.
And I'm Brandon, your host. And man, I'm super excited. Flower, I got to hang out with you just briefly a little bit as I was over at Casa doing some summer job stuff.
Yep, I remember we were doing renovations.
With the refrigerator.
Yes.
I was talking with Emily about that in another episode. I'm just really excited to have you on here. I know that you've been working with Runaway Youth. We were actually just talking about that homeless youth, and you even were a homeless youth yourself before.
I was.
Working with the kids.
At 13, I started running away at 13, and then in turn my mother also would throw me out. We didn't get along. I grew up in a lot of abuse, a lot of addiction, and I started acting out around 13 in retaliation to that stuff. I started experimenting as well. By 15, I was in juvie for grand theft auto. Oh, wow. And then 3 months after that, I was in rehab for heroin addiction. And then I think 19 or 20 is when I kind of found a job and found people that kind of were like, no, you can do stuff. You're capable. Like, we'll help you navigate and figure it out. And I found work and started working a job, and then I met my husband and I had a kid, and having my son that became my central focus. Yeah. And that was everything. And I raised my son and got an opportunity to start working with youth when he was around 15 or 16 with homeless runaway youth and at-risk youth. And it's been awesome.
That's so cool.
So got to help the kids that I was like, it feels good.
That's awesome.
It's a good thing.
So you've been mentoring kids pretty much ever since that point, it sounds like.
As much as I can, I try to be an example, and I mean, mentoring them, they do reach out to me. I've got alumni from when we had our shelter that still reach out for things, and that's pretty great. I help kids. I got to see a couple kids graduate. They didn't think that I was telling you. I didn't think they were going to graduate, and they did. I got to see them walk, and they called me specifically to ask me to be there. And that is such a privilege that they even think of me in that way. Because you don't know if you make a real impact on someone's life. You think you're one person, they're a brief moment, it's not going to mean anything. Yeah. And sometimes it really does. And now I get to work with the college, and it's athletes. But a lot of them also they come from similar backgrounds. Yeah. So they have to come and have mentors, and they don't know how to navigate getting health insurance or getting food stamps if they need it, and getting around town, even how to get a bus pass. Like some very basic things. Some kids don't know how to use a dishwasher. We think that the most basic things we know, or we call it common sense. Yeah. And I don't think that exists. I think it's taught. I think everything is taught to us. So we shouldn't assume or judge, right?
You don't know what you don't know.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Got to have someone show you.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. I remember when I was talking with Emily about, what is the Youth Culture Podcast and what do we really want to go after? And one of the big things that we had in, big letters was this word mental health. Mm-hmm. And so you've been working with runaway teens and youth and homeless youth, and now with these college-age ladies. And I think it's so interesting. My dad and I were having a conversation on the back deck last night, and it was kind of this thought that, the reason mental health is so important is the only way to be able to identify that is to actually say, hey, I have a problem, or hey, I've got something going on.
Absolutely.
Can you help me figure out what's going on?
Absolutely.
And so I would love to hear from you, what has been kind of your process with someone coming to you that has something going on with their mental health, and how have you been able to navigate that and help them walk through that?
Well, right now, in our community, we have the ADAPT program. And the ADAPT program on Madrone and Harvard, there's a big, huge building, says ADAPT outside of it. They have a walk-in clinic for mental health. And it's open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it's, I want to say Monday through Fridays. It's open to anybody who needs it. And so if I have a girl or a male or anybody really contact me and they're struggling and it's urgent, but they're afraid of the ER, that is an option that I usually will provide for them. Working with the college, we have CARES advocates, and they are trained, they are trauma informed, and they know how to advocate for youth and to protect youth. We used to have battered persons advocacy, which is Peace at Home now. And they are really good at setting up resources to provide people with mental health. And I think a big part of it is someone will come to you and they'll be like, I feel like I'm feeling icky, I'm feeling depressed, or I feel like I don't fit in, or we have a big issue with self-harm. That's a big thing. And I'm 20 years free of self-harm. So
come on,
we have girls that come to us and they are just head to toe covered, and it's terrifying. And they're ashamed, but they shouldn't be ashamed because they don't understand. And once they understand that that's how they're dealing with their trauma and that's how they're processing, they can find healthier ways to process. And
instead of like self-harm.
We have all sorts. Talking is a big part of it. That's to me a big part of it. Some girls felt very alone. They'll come to you and they feel their families don't understand them. And I know this is a religious podcast. You're religious. We have people that come to us from religious backgrounds and their parents aren't at a place to understand them or accept them, or they're not meeting eye to eye on what their values are. And the children's response is to completely internalize it and just take that into themselves like they're a bad person. And that can be hard. So I get to sometimes navigate too and help keep that bond with parents.
That's beautiful.
And help parents find that empathy to understand their children, and help children their kids learn how to be more patient, because there's a lack of patience for people learning who you are if you are different, That's a big, being accepted is huge in the youth, and being understood is huge. And
absolutely,
that's oftentimes all they seem to want is that.
Absolutely. And I find that, working with teens, I just met with a parent just this last week, and we were having some conversations about identity when it came to one of the students. And one of the things I've found personally for me was that, being around peer groups and friends and those kinds of things, you really do become the average of the 5 people you hang out with, Mm-hmm. And so if the people that you're hanging out with aren't being of a good influence, right, you're going to go and make bad decisions. I mean, I agree with that. You were talking about Grand Theft Auto and all this.
Yes. 100%.
And how much of that was your friend group?
Oh, it was a big part of it, because we all came from the same background. And I'll never forget there being moments of adults saying, "What were you thinking?" And me going, "I don't think that we were." We were just all just like, "This sounds like a great idea." Sure. And I have that conversation a lot. I one time told a girl, you don't have to follow other people. And she said, "I'm not a follower." And I said, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings or offend you, but you're not standing up for your convictions. Mm-hmm. You say this is your value. You say this is your belief, but I don't see that in your actions. And that is all that matters to anybody, is your actions. There's a song I've been listening to from this old musical that talks about the choices that we make being our own, and that we get to choose for ourselves. And the whole time we think that it's out of our control, our good or bad choices. It's always our choice. Yeah. And you always can stand up. And I did have to separate myself from every single person I was friends with when I was a kid to get sober and to get away from crime. And I've probably only in the last 5-6 years have spoken to some of them again, but I still keep them at a distance because they still struggle with addiction. Wow. They didn't learn from the mistakes. So you can love people from afar, and you can value them, but you can kind of be that kind of beacon of light, to kind of be the mentor, to be the example from afar. Absolutely. And hopefully those people will see you doing well and go, I want to do well too, and eventually step up,
Absolutely. I love that.
With athletes, it's a little easier because they're already a team. They have that team mentality. And if you're a youth with mental health, you don't feel like you're a part of a team. You don't feel like you have a group necessarily. So if you can form like youth groups, if you can form even like girl kind of empowerment groups where you just hang out and you do positive things and you communicate, you have somebody that you can call and say, I'm angry, I'm upset. It's okay to be angry and upset. Yeah. You don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed that you're sad or angry. Let's talk it through and process it so that you don't internalize, because that's where mental health gets out of control, is an internalization, I think.
Yeah, it's all the battle of the mind, really.
It is. It is.
I've talked to, man, it's crazy because I feel like over the last few years, specifically these last couple of years since COVID, talking with these youth kids and even young adults that are like, hey, I feel like I don't have any friends, and so because of that, I resulted in doing this, making these decisions. I don't know how to get out of it and all this kind of stuff. Or I know some other people that have been addicted to drugs and alcohol and found that pattern like coming back into that because of the isolation thing and because of not being able to talk through what is really going on in the mind.
Right.
And, you know, scripture says in Romans 12:1, it says to renew your mind, right? It says that we're not supposed to be transformed by the world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And so, like, the way that I read that, how does that apply to, like, everybody? When we are able to renew our mind to what is truth and our convictions and the things that we believe in, we can stand firm on that. It's actually easier to make better decisions when you're able to have better friend groups and those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
You're able to stand up for things that really matter. And, you know, I'm also thinking about just like the different teenagers that I have in my life right now. And I'm walking through, we actually have a team of ladies that literally all they do is they connect with those girls and they walk alongside with them. And then, you know, I hear things like, hey, this is what's going on. Just wanted you to know.
Right.
Maybe you should meet with this parent. Kind of thing. But really, I trust my team. And so going back to that thing of like teamwork, right?
Yeah.
Having positive teamwork and being able to work through that together, I think is such a healthy thing. Because it's not my job as the leader to micromanage or fix every single little
right
thing.
No, you have supports. You make sure that there are supports in place for everybody.
Yes.
Like, and that's the same. You do that with your programs, and I think our community tries to do that with their programs. Sure. And at the college now where I work, we do that in our programs. I'm working on someone who's dealing with mental health right now, and I have 5 different people that are all specialized in different areas communicating for that person so that that person will be safe and be protected and have what they need. And I think that's great if you can have people doing that with your youth. You know, I think it's easy to get focused on a big picture and lose people too. Like you don't realize you're losing one. And I'm not religious, but I was raised from religion and I am spiritual, and I do believe that if one leaves the flock, you should leave the 99 to go save the one. It's something that has stuck with me my whole life. And it's like, you 99, stick it out right now because this one has fled and they're just as valuable as you all are, you know? So that's something I hold when I see someone that is on the outskirts with the rest of the girls. They're not quite making it. They're struggling. They're withdrawing.
Yeah.
They make extra effort for that person to talk to that person. And I say, I'm in therapy, by the way, because COVID was rough.
Yeah.
COVID was rough. And I told you I'm recovered from self-harm for 20 years. And that doesn't mean I don't still think about those things. That doesn't mean I don't still have dark thoughts. And I do. So when I do, I call my therapist and I tell my family, like, hey, I'm getting weird. Yeah. Like, I need to be communicating and I need to be social more. And I need to stop being so withdrawn because it's affecting my mental health. And really being brave enough to just say it and getting rid of that stigma and taboo that it's weird. It's so not weird to have mental health issues in this day and age. I would think, honestly, it would be strange to not have some kind of mental health issues when you look at the state of our world. Right. Like, you know, it's okay to be struggling and to say so.
And I'll even say, and maybe this will bring some comfort to some of you listening, like, as a believer, and I've said this on some of the other podcasts, but like even as a believer, I still struggle. As a believer, I still struggle with my understanding God's love, understanding like mercy and grace and all those kinds of things, because going back to the whole thing of like religion versus relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like religion is so you're doing all these bad things, here's the consequences for it, and it's like wrath, and it's like not that discipline is a bad thing, but I'm saying like
I know what
on
you're
an
saying.
extreme level, right?
Sure.
And then you've got the part of I'm gonna walk with you through this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like there's times where I've went to God and I'm like, God, I'm really struggling with my identity right now.
Yep.
As a 25, now I'm 25, as a 25-year-old, right? Like, I want to have a family. I want to, like, have all these goals and these dreams and all this kind of stuff. And I look at mistakes I've made in the past, and sometimes it's hard to move on from that.
Absolutely,
you know? And
absolutely.
So, like, talking through that and being really transparent with the teens, like, they know where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I try my best to be transparent and open. Not that I'm letting out dirty laundry in every way possible.
No, who can share yourself without sharing deep details. Yeah.
Just being super transparent. And so what I've found through that is like talking with other mentors and other people, kind of like therapy, right? Like my therapy looks like I go to a couple of people that I have in my life that I count as like my accountability. And then honestly, for me, it's just getting that time with God and not talking, not praying, not doing the religious thing.
Yeah.
But allowing him to speak and like listening to
the spiritual aspect of opening yourself up to hear the guidance that you need.
What he's saying.
Oh, that makes sense to me. Absolutely.
And that has really helped me. I think another element of mental health that for me, you know, I was listening to music that wasn't positive. It wasn't bringing me to a place of helping my state.
Yes,
of being,
absolutely.
You know? So one of the things I've talked to the teenagers a lot about is like the music you're listening to, the things you're watching, like with your eye gate opening, like all of those things really matter. And so not the thing of like, hey, don't do that.
Right.
But giving them the ability to say, hey, maybe I should actually think about how this is affecting me as a person.
I think being self-aware, that's being self-aware.
Being self-aware.
I honestly, because I listen to every genre you could imagine.
Me too.
And I am and I will tell you, yes, if I want to rage, I listen to music that makes me feel rage. If I want to cry and weep, I listen to music that makes me do that. I know it controls my emotions that way, and it affects and empowers me or can bring me down. So I have a playlist called Sunshine and Rainbows, and that's all it is uplifting. It's nothing but positive, uplifting music. And when I am having a really dark day, I put on my elbow pads, my knee pads, my roller skates, and I listen to my Sunshine and Rainbows. And I also try to walk around the world being a rainbow for people and being a positive for people. Like I do.
In a flower.
I had somebody say to me, "You look like a walking rainbow." And I said, "Did it make you smile?" And he said it did. And I said, "That's all I want. I just want people to be, because what if someone doesn't smile all day long and you're the one that made them smile? Like, just
I have
worth
a story
it."
on that. There was a girl that when I was in middle school, so I went to Sutherland my whole life, graduated from Sutherland, all that kind of stuff. But in my 7th grade year, it was really tough for me. I was struggling. My parents just went through divorce. It was like just a very hard time for me. So through that, we went to a different school. I was also experiencing bullying at the school. And so because of that, I went to another school. But in the middle of that, and going through a very rough time, there was this girl that I met. Her name was Lexa. And I always talk about Lexa because she has literally changed my life. She took her life and ended her life. The beauty in all of that, even though it was a very tragic thing, she was one of the only people that made you smile on a bad day. And I remember being at her like memorial, and everyone was talking about how she was the kindest, sweetest person. And she was a believer, so like I believe she's up in heaven and all of that. So there's comfort in that, right? Yeah. It still was a very sad thing that something like that would happen, but the beauty from ashes, so to speak, that came from that was that you never know whose life you can touch through a smile.
It's
and
true.
That was the quote. And,
it's true.
And that has really stuck with me.
So you bring that person up, and I don't like to bring up Robin Williams, but I can't help but bring up Robin Williams when we talk about mental health and being the sunny person that always makes everyone else smile.
Sure.
because we internalize. And that's why I'm in therapy, and that's why I have people I talk to, because when you're that light for people, you oftentimes forget to tell people when you're struggling, and you cut that off. You don't want people to know because you want to be the light for everybody all the time. Part of being the light for everybody all the time is being honest and saying sometimes there's like a shadow trying to block my light, man.
Right.
Like, and I've got to talk about it so that I can keep on shining bright for people. Because I think we forget that. We assume if people smile and they're sunny, that they're okay. But oftentimes they struggle more with mental health than people who, you know, seem erratic, like seem a little bit kooky. Those people might have it figured out a little bit more because they're living in their truth.
Yeah.
You know, with religion and stuff, I have friends that people call religious zealots, but they are kind and they're loving and they're just passionate about their faith. And it comes across to people who aren't familiar with it as weird.
Yeah.
You know, but it isn't necessarily weird if you don't, it's just you don't understand.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. I think just going back to what I said before in Romans, it was actually Romans 12:1. It says, brothers and sisters, I would desire that God would desire that you would live your lives as a living sacrifice. What does that mean? That literally means that we're living to serve other people. We're actually living to bring the light. So it's like that thing.
Yeah.
Then verse 2 says, now be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I find it so interesting that there's both sides of that coin. Mm-hmm. There's the part of that that's Romans 12:1. Hey, live your life as a living sacrifice unto God. Reflect him in everything that you do. Be an example of light. Be an example of the truth to other people. But then at the same time, it's so important that we renew the mind, going back to what you were saying about being the sunshine, but also recognizing, you know, where it also says in the New Testament that we don't battle against flesh and blood and principalities and powers, but we're actually fighting the spirit realm. Mm-hmm. We're fighting between light and dark.
Absolutely.
And it's so easy to focus on what is the dark doing? Mm-hmm. Oh man, our world is turning to chaos and all this stuff. And yet there's a light that's shining at the end of it. There's actually light in the middle of that. Yep. And it looks like flower.
Oh, thank you.
It looks like, you know, Sean Beer back there doing the video. It looks like you guys listening to the podcast, right? And so it's like the way that God has designed us to be is to actually reflect light. And without going into so much of the scientific stuff, but like we are light, we are aura. We actually are made of light, and even down to the atom being formed in, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but like we're made in the shape of a cross underneath the atom. Like it's just this really beautiful thing. And so where it says in Genesis, like in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and he spoke it and it came to be. Like we are made from that essence. We are made from that beauty. We are made from that. And so all of that reflects light.
Right.
And that's what's in you. And that's what's in me. And that's what's in everybody in the world, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it's really easy to look at the idea of like religion, right? And talk about religion and God is this and God is this deity and God. But at the same time, like, man, God created each of us to reflect him, and you reflect his light. Like even just being around you, like I feel God's essence and his presence that's in you reflecting and touching my life, and it's affecting the wavelengths that go out through throughout this podcast.
I think that's wonderful.
It's so beautiful. So, man, yeah, the whole thing on mental health, I just think is super, super important.
Well, you know, you talk about that. I grew up calling it turning it outward when you do service, because that service fills you back up. And Emily, and my old boss, she always talked about filling your bucket. Is your bucket full? And make sure, but your bucket needs to be full before you can fill someone else's bucket. And she always had these like analogies that she would use.
Yeah.
But in my experience, when you turn it outward, and if everybody's turning it outward and everybody is caring about each other and communicating that love for each other, then you're checking up on each other.
Yeah.
And there's always an opportunity for that conversation of, are you mentally okay? Are you doing all right? How are you today? Mm-hmm. No, I'm not asking flippantly, how are you? How are you today? Yeah. Like genuinely ask that person.
Right.
Maybe no one's ever asked them how they're doing, you know? So when we do service for others, that is doing service for ourselves, I think, too. And I think, yes, take that time to step back, reflect, and fill up your own goodness so that you can continue that for people, you know?
Absolutely. I know from a faith standpoint too, like being in the Word of God, prayer, all of that, even though that can seem like a checklist, and we'll talk about this on a whole nother day, the aspect of prayer, what is prayer, why prayer is important.
Which, as a non-religious person, I think prayer is important.
Absolutely.
100% valued. And I think it's worth it. And I think having a connection to a higher power is almost mandatory to continue to grow and improve as a person.
Absolutely. I love that. And so with faith, like, you know, Jesus said, right, the faith of a mustard seed, if you can believe that and speak to that mountain, it will be moved. But you have to have the faith for that. Well, where does the faith come from? That's otherworldly. That's supernatural. That's something that from the spirit realm we don't understand.
Right.
That only the God of the universe could actually release and bring into that moment. So my testimony was when I was 17, I literally took my life. I was dead on the floor. I had ended my life. And the reason I did that led up to that was I didn't talk about what I was going through with mental health. I didn't talk about that I was in church and going to youth group and doing all this stuff, but I never had a relationship with God. I didn't, and I didn't understand who I was. So even for a minute, the Christian people, we're going to throw that out for a sec because I want to bring the physical element of that, like as a human being, right?
Yeah.
Like my soul was not in tune with who I was in my own identity.
Right.
And so it was through that where I wasn't talking about what I was going through, and I experienced bullying and thrown in trash cans and lockers, and I reached a point in my life where I just felt like life wasn't worth living anymore. Now we're going to bring the spiritual aspect of that back in. For me, I came to the realization that I lived 17 years of my life without a relationship with God. So when I was literally dead on the floor, I saw this is going to sound weird, but like I came out like a ghost, like I came out of my body like a supernatural experience. And I saw my life flash before my eyes of all the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things of my life, the chaos and the beauty together. And it was in that where I knew I was about to be accountable for all of that. And this fear came over me. I was like, oh my God. Like, because I realized, it was like, dude, I'm done. Like this, I did not live my life the way that I should have. Like, it was like this fear thing, right?
Yeah.
But in that moment, here's what happened. I looked over, like I was looking this way and I looked this way, and all of a sudden, this violent rushing wind, as the Bible says in Acts chapter 2, this violent rushing wind came into my room, and I saw the presence of God come into my room and literally breathe me back to life. And the reason I'm alive today is because God is real. And I understand that that's my own story and everyone else has their own experiences, but for me, that was the moment that changed my life. And literally the reason I'm standing today and sharing on this podcast my testimony is because God loved me back to life. It wasn't that I was breathed back to life and then I had all this stuff I had to change overnight to be good,
right,
to like live a good life. Like the reason I'm serving God today in my faith is because he loved me back to life and has loved me through that process. And then I have Wendy and Carl and my family and all these support groups and different people who have helped me to become the person that I am today. And so I think had I talked through what I was really going through,
yes,
I would have been able to maybe not have that happen.
You would have found your spiritual guidance sooner.
Sure.
You would have found God sooner.
Absolutely.
You would have found the thing that gives you that spark to keep you going through the darkness, right?
Yeah.
Like absolutely. It's being honest, being open about stuff and not being afraid of being judged by the people that love you.
Sure.
I think that's a big part of it, you know. Emily's somebody that has been with me through a lot. I've gone through so much in my life, and she met me at the hardest time of my life where I have a husband that came out of the closet as homosexual and left my family. And he said, I'm not paying bills. I'm not taking care of you and my son anymore. It's on you.
Wow.
She didn't judge me through it.
Right.
She loved me through it.
Beautiful.
She held me up through it. I'm now getting my 4.0 in college.
Which we were just talking about.
Yes, I'm
That's
earning a
amazing.
degree as a homeless dropout teen. I'm now earning a degree, and I'm going to own a business that will teach parents how to advocate for themselves and take care of themselves so their kids don't end up in our shelters. Like, that's my goal. So we have that passion.
Yeah.
As long as you got that passion for those youth, you're going to do great things with your podcast, with your church. Like, I think it's amazing.
Thank you so much.
I think that you're doing great things for mental health as well. So I think it's awesome.
I would love to see in the craziness of our world right now. And I understand that some things for some people are black and white, and for others it's very all over the place and all of that, because we're changing and things. But I would love to see more people who are not necessarily in the church come and talk about mental health and talk through some of that kind of stuff, not being religious, but talking through those things in their life that they've walked through, much like
Yes,
you.
yeah.
And I think that this is kind of the start of something amazing, and I think that we're going to see some more guests come on here like that.
I've got
I'm
some
very excited.
suggestions for you, actually.
Awesome.
I know a few people who'd be happy to come and talk to you and be respectful. And,
That's awesome.
we can find a meeting of the minds with
Yeah,
things. Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, our goal is love and kindness and making sure that we all have what we need.
Absolutely.
And-
'Cause it's different for every person.
Yes, absolutely. And whether that's coming from a place of that's my religious value or that's just my spiritual or that's whatever it is, it's for goodness.
Yes,
it's for
it is.
good. So why can't we all meet up on that and agree to that and work together in that?
You're
you
right.
know?
And God is good. He is good. And he has placed that in us from the time that he spoke and it came to be. As I'm just kind of looking at the timeline here, I was really thinking for this podcast, like kind of the theme over the last 3, 4, 5 podcasts, it's come back to this thing of like creation, like the way that we were born.
Yeah.
And I think it's so fascinating that, God said, let there be light, and there was light, right? And then the next verse says, and the world was without form or void, meaning it was chaos. There was nothing formed. It was just, and the Spirit of God was there. God's Spirit was brooding and hovering over all of that. And it's not this thing of like, the way I picture this in my brain, right? Like you've got the bird that's like hovering over the water where it's just like still, right? And he's resting there. And God says, let us form the world. And it came to be. And the Holy Spirit's like, whoa, he's like creating and all this stuff. And then we see like, we got the plants and the animals and the birds of the air and the sea and all this kind of stuff is happening, right? And God says it was good. That's what it says. Then he creates man and then creates woman, right? And all this. And he breathes his spirit into him. And then he says, and it was very good. Human beings are the only thing created by God that have his actual nature, that have his actual DNA, that have his actual essence. And so when people are like, all I want to do is reflect love. Well, that's because you were literally made from the DNA of love. The reason that you want to love somebody is because God is love and he has actually placed that in you.
Yeah.
And I think that aside from things like science and religion and those kinds of things, which I think are all valid, this idea that we were formed from love, I think is something that we can all gather around.
I think it's a wonderful idea. I don't know why anyone would want to refute it. But I also get teased that I am an optimist and I am a dreamer. And I am an optimist. And I will never stop being that regardless of what I go through in life. Like,
It's beautiful.
I choose to be happy. I choose to be positive, and I choose to face challenges as opportunities. So I feel like most people should be doing that in this world. Would be a happier place. But you do talk about, focusing on the light. People want to focus on the negative, and especially if you're like looking at, I'm bad, I'm doing this, I'm sinning, or I'm drinking, or I'm doing drugs, or I'm cheating, I'm lying, I'm doing these things. I have a therapist that always says to me, honey, what are you doing? What are you doing though? I say, well, I'm exercising every day. I've stopped eating sugars. I've cut out all the extra stuff I'm not supposed to have. I'm volunteering here every single week. And she's like, oh, wow, so you're doing really good things. How about we focus on the good? And the more you focus on the good things that you're doing, the more you'll only be doing good things. And the bad will just kind of fall away
really do.
into the shadows and be behind you. Yeah. And, get thee behind me. Like, why not?
So good. I love the way you said that too. Obviously, being a believer, it's so easy to want to fall into that thing of, I'm not being perfect.
Well, no, you won't. You won't be either. So it's just like,
exactly.
Let it go.
Right.
Like, that's not happening.
It's funny when I've sat down with some parents and they're like, my kid is not on this track. I'm like, okay, so that's your goal for your child. What good are they doing? Well, and here's some of the things going on. Here's some of the things I'm noticing. I want to challenge you. I just did this with a parent this last week. I'd love to challenge you to actually write down 10 things you love about your daughter that you love about her. Not like what she's doing, but what you love about her as a person when you don't feel like it.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing to do.
And I think that's the reflection of love, right? Like, Jesus loves us where we are at. God loves us where you are at.
Oh, you said that so right, because that is, when you're dealing with youth and mental health,
that's it.
Loving them where they're at. And I have parents that say, but I'm worried about my child's eternal salvation. I understand that, but you need to worry about your child now and keeping them with you now and alive. If you are concerned with their eternal salvation, you probably want to try to keep them alive right now and love them through whatever they're going through and be there when they come out at the other end of things, because they're going to need someone to pick them up and wash them off and help pick them back up, because they will come back around to you and say, I was wrong. I need your help. Yeah. They usually do.
Absolutely. That's so good. Man, I think that this has been an amazing conversation. I'm just very grateful that you came, and
thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
I don't have a whole lot of, I just have what I've lived through, and I that's all I got to offer.
It's beautiful.
But,
I'm so encouraged by it. And I think a lot of these listeners, my hope and my goal is actually that most of these people that listen aren't even people that go to church.
Okay, so no one's going to be offended that I've got tattoos and I'm pierced and I've got.
I have a tattoo too, so we're good.
Okay, that's good. Because I've got a lot of them, but but they're symbolic too. So my mother said I'd never do anything in my life, and everything I ever said I wanted to do, I've done so far. So when she looked at me one day and said, "You'll do that when pigs fly." And then I did that thing she said I wouldn't do. I was like, pigs do fly, I guess. What can you do?
That's awesome. Well, I just want to affirm you and say that you are doing a good job. I think it's really amazing just hearing your story, and I'm very excited to see everything continue to unfold and just how many, the lives you're going to change through all the amazing accomplishments you're doing. And I just want to say to those of you who are listening that, if you are struggling with mental health, reach out to somebody. Find somebody that is in your circle that can walk with you, because we were never meant to do life alone. And just know deep down that there is a love out there that will accept you right where you're at. And so I hope you guys have an amazing day. Flower, thank you for coming on here.
Thank you. I'd like to add to that. I have one thing I'd like to add. If you struggle with mental health, or you want to self-harm, or you're in a dark moment but you're afraid to reach out, you can text 741-741, and it will connect you to an anonymous person who has experience and personal experience with those things, that you can have text to talk about that stuff.
Great.
So you have that direct line as a youth with your phone, 741-741.
Perfect. I love it.
That's the big thing I want to say. And love yourself. You're worth loving.
That's so good.
And if you don't see your value, trust me, look around. There is someone who does. Hold on to that value.
Amazing. We'll see you guys in another episode. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You guys have an amazing day. We'll see you later. Peace.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're interested in checking out more of our podcasts as they come available, please download our app in your device's app store or check us out on your podcast platform at Garden Valley Church. We look forward to seeing you next time.